Hey everyone, I'm going to go ahead and walk you through the essay assignment that we're going to do for the first common task, the narrative essay, so that you have access to these instructions whenever you want. If you want to go back and look at what I say you should do or some ideas I give you here, or if you're absent today, you can kind of get the same instructions online. I'm going to put this video on Google Classroom. I'm also going to put this document that I'm editing on Google Classroom as well. You'll notice this is the sheet that you have in front of you, or that I should have given to you if you were absent. Okay, so you look at the front side and it says narrative essay, quarter one, common task one. And here's just a little bit of instruction here that I do want to read through. It says, for this common task, you're going to write a narrative essay that captures an event or moment or routine or detail from your past and explains how it helped make you the person you are today. Some questions that we thought about last week or the last 2 weeks. What lessons about yourself did you learn then or now from this moment? Does this lesson apply to everyone, like everyone in the world? Does it apply to only people who are like you, or does it only apply to you? The more specifically you can focus on small details like imagery or dialogue in your storytelling, the better your audience can connect emotionally with your writing. Remember, the thing we've talked about a lot is you want to show, not tell the reader what is happening in your story. And I know I've talked about this a lot, but I do want to emphasize it again. This is very important. You are not writing an argumentative essay. You are telling a story. Remember, that word narrative basically just means storytelling. You're telling a story. You're not writing, you don't have to worry about a 5-paragraph essay, an intro with a thesis statement at the end, right? Because that's not as interesting. It's good, it has its purpose, but it's not as interesting as when we get to tell stories, right? So that's what you're doing in this essay. You're going to show the reader rather than tell them the lesson. You might mention the lesson at the end after you've made it abundantly clear, or you need that one moment, kind of like Chang Ray Lee does in Magical Dinners, where he has that moment where he drops the lesson of the story in, but it's the only time he says it, and that's why it's more powerful, because it's just the only time that it's there. Okay, I'm rambling. Okay, I'm going to grade you on two big things: brainstorming and organization. So that's what I would like to talk to you about in this essay. You are going to turn in this sheet, which is where your brainstorming will be, along with the rubric. You're going to staple those two together. Make sure your name's on it also. Okay, so first let's talk about brainstorming. It says, using the back of the sheet, map out the key details of your event, moment, or story. Remember, for the last 2 weeks, we've talked about two things: food and photographs. You may organize your brainstorming as you wish, but think about doing a concept map. I found this one. It's a very basic concept map from the internet. It's not perfect, but it's a kind of a good way to get your ideas down in print that you might want to include in the story. So here's how I filled out mine. Remember, I talked a little bit about the story I'm going to tell. And I'm coming up with the title Faith in Donut Holes. I'm going to talk about this experience where I went to Dunkin' Donuts as a routine after church when we were this period in the mid 90s when we were going to church regularly. If you don't know, my dad was in the Navy, so we moved all over the place. So it was hard for us to establish roots in places. And, we moved in, I think we lived in literally like 15 different houses in different states. So finding a group of friends or finding a church that you felt comfortable with was not an easy task. But for some reason, we were going to one at this time, and we would always go to Dunkin' Donuts afterward, and it was one of my favorite things. I always looked forward to it. Yeah, so what happened? First, I'm over here. In Sunday school, I felt inferior for the first time during a quiz game. So I'm going to talk about the story of going to Dunkin' Donuts after. I'm going to focus on just one event this time that we did this little quiz game in Sunday school. I really prided myself on being smart. Like, that was very competitive when I was a kid. And this was the first time that I didn't know the answers to things that other kids did. And I felt really bad about it. So I want to talk about what the lessons I learned from that were, or are, I guess. So I was made to feel inferior during this quiz game. Next, I asked my mom never to go again, and she agreed, which is both ended up being, I think, good and bad at the time, but mainly good that I'm going to talk about. After that, she cheered me up as she always did, as she always does, by taking us to Dunkin' Donuts afterward. Okay, oh, where and when did it happen? It was at the Dunkin' Donuts near the Orange Park United Methodist Church in Orange Park, Florida. What happened after the event? Well, after the event, I asked if I could start going to the regular old people adult services. And I found there, frankly, that it was easy to be ignored. And that's what I wanted. I wanted to not stand out. I wanted to kind of hide away. And it worked. I mean, it's not a good or a bad thing, but well, it's both a good and a bad thing, I would say. And that's what happened. How did I feel? Like I said at the beginning, I felt foolish and embarrassed. But then afterward, I was kind of selfishly very grateful that my mom allowed me to do this, and it was kind of capped off with this trip to Dunkin' Donuts. How did it change my life? This was the part that was hard to explain. You'll notice it looks kind of messy here, but what I wrote was, it allowed me to continue feeling good about myself for both good and bad reasons. So, like I said, it's not good to want to be ignored, right? But thinking about the story now, some, I guess, 20 years on, or however many years, 25 or something years on, the only thing I'm really left with is something I didn't realize at the time, which is how grateful I feel for my mom, and her role in my life, and how nice she is, and how she was really saving me from this thing. And I didn't realize this. I just wanted to get out of something, and I thought it was awesome that my mom let me get out of it. But thinking about it now, I realize how cool it was, that she allowed me to save face. And the lasting memory for me is just that it makes me happy, right? So that's the story. I might make some other notes like I did down here. I just like to make notes of little images or other anecdotes I want to put in the story. So I talked about the experience of the teacher calling on me and waiting for me to say something. It seemed like it took forever for that to happen. The taste of donut holes, which, as we all know, are delectable, delicious. What else? This was a hard one, but when I was sitting there thinking about this event, I thought about when, to get to the church, we had to drive over train tracks, and there's this, I don't know, it's like this huge hill that went up and then down immediately. And there's this, if you're going kind of fast over a hill, this moment where your stomach feels sort of like, almost like you're on a mini roller coaster. I don't know how I'm going to include that yet, but I want to include that in the story. And then the feel of going to the old people's service and being bored, frankly, and flipping through the Bible and looking for pictures to look at. I remember that also. Again, I don't know how I'm going to include it, but I want to include it. So, okay, I'm going to flip back to the front of your page. And I want to talk about the other thing I'm going to grade you on, which is the organization of your essay. So you've brainstormed a lot of events in your concept map for how you want your essay to look. Now it says, now your task is to make this interesting for the reader. So think, what is the most interesting way to tell this story? And for this story, for this narrative, I would like you to use what's called an in medias res beginning. I'm going to define this over to the side. It sounds very complex, but all it really means is in the middle of things. I'm not totally sure, but I believe it's Latin for in the middle of things. So rather than start a story where, the easiest place to start is just in the beginning, right? That's how most stories start. So tell me about this time. Well, I would say, well, it was in Orange Park, Florida, and blah, blah, blah. But as you know, that's not always the most interesting way the audience is not always interested in hearing those details, simply where it starts. The reader really wants to hear the most interesting thing, right? That's how you hook them. That's how you get them interested in your story. So this is a tactic for starting with the most interesting thing, the tensest moment of your story, the most dramatic moment of your story. It might be like right before you're about to realize the big important thing that you learn in the story. And then you can always go back and fill in the other details later. It's okay to go out of order, right? And then you do probably want to finish with a reference to that big thing that you've learned. Okay. Remember, again, the clearer you make this for the reader without directly stating it, the better. Okay. So I'm going to flip back to the back, and I already have something written here for my in medias res introduction. And it says the instructions are: write an intro that starts in medias res, in the middle of things. See side 1 for more instructions. Try to keep your writing under 50 words. So you only need to write around 50 words on this page. So here's what I came up with. This took some brainstorming and some practice, but I had my notebook in front of me and I started making, you'll notice there's crossing out of stuff on there, there's scratches, there's everything. Your planner, which you have, so use it on the back. And here's what I wrote. So starting in the middle, I decided to look at these images. I wanted to talk about this one right here where it says the experience of the teacher calling on me. And then me waiting for me what seemed like forever to answer. So I wrote the teacher's dialogue. Do you know the answer, Ryan? I may never have heard this question in my life. I always knew the answer. When sports abandoned me, maybe I would say, when my athletic ability abandoned me, which happened around the 6th grade, I think. This is the one thing I could always rely on. I was smart, or at least reasonably so, and I knew it. At least I was smart about trivial things, like random facts from books. I don't like the way that sounds, so I'm going to just make a note over here. Remember to change this, Ryan. Comments. And frankly, I like to show off how smart I was. I usually volunteered answers in class before anyone could ask me what one was. So this was new. I actually didn't know the answer. I was presented with the option of fighting or fleeing, and I chose to flee. I remained silent. Happy, or rather unhappy, to let others carry on with their day and leave me be. Okay, so that's the way. I'm going to make this slightly smaller font size so we can see it all on one page. Let's try that again. Forget about the font size. So this is how I've decided to tell my story. So I got to go back and fill in all the other details that you don't know yet. It was Orange Park, Florida. We moved around a lot, set the stage, all that kind of stuff. But I feel like I've sort of hooked the reader by starting with this moment. I did want to type it in front of you, and I tried that on the first take. This is take 2, and that just took too long. But I want to tell you that, let me just make sure you understand that this was not a very quick thing for me to do, writing this essay. It might look fast for me sometimes, because I have written literally hundreds of essays in my life, and I've read thousands and thousands of essays. And I'm pretty good at, typing an essay pretty fast. But I want you to notice how I make mistakes. There's things I want to change. That's totally okay. When you start writing today, this is a rough draft you're writing. I encourage you to make mistakes and take risks and try out something that sounds weird or unique or curious or you're not sure about. And who knows, maybe it will suck and it's not a good essay, and that's fine. And if it sucks, just delete it and try again, right? But that's a long way of saying that if you only write something that is safe, that doesn't suck, then you're not going to learn how to be a better writer. The only way we get to be better at something is by trying and failing and making mistakes and then learning from those mistakes. So really, today especially, when you write your rough draft, try out new things that you've never tried before in your writing. So, okay, I'm rambling now. We're gonna go ahead and start. So, all right, thanks.